The way that the book, Jan, it's a story. The protagonist, the good guy, is Donald Trump, and he stands in for all the good guys. The bad guy is Henry Kissinger, because not just because Henry Kissinger was at the origins of this relationship with Nixon, but because Henry Kissinger made a career out of it, and he made a lot of money off it, and he made other people a lot of money. And it's also Kissinger built institutions to protect his interpretation or his version of this very dangerous relationship for Americans. How the China lobby worked was Kissinger was never paid directly by China. People don't understand that. Kissinger was paid by American corporations that wanted to do business in China. So what Kissinger would do was he would take them on long trips to Beijing, and they'd be wined and dined. And I mean, this started with, it started in the 1970s after Kissinger left government, and went on until Kissinger's death in December 2023. So what they would do is the American corporations would hear counter pitches from Chinese officials saying, yeah, we're sure we're very interested in you doing business here. But what's really important to us is, and these are big businesses, right? These are not small mom and pop organizations. These are big American multinationals that have the ears, at least, of the President of the United States and Congress. So they can make a phone call and they can get people on the phone, they can get someone in the White House on the phone right away. So China liked that idea very much. They're not paying for anything. They say, yeah, we'd love to have you set up manufacturing here. And, but here's what you have to do. You have to make sure that China stays open. It's in your interest, right, to make sure that China stays open, and it's in our interest too. And there is actually a China lobby that pays people money to lobby for China, but the most influential lobbyists are political donors, right? People with companies worth billions and billions of dollars. So they're not only making the case for China to the people, to the recipients of their donations, they're also telling the people who are getting those donations, like, you better be nice to China. That's what I want. That's what I'm paying you for, to protect China in the halls of Congress, or protect China in the White House. So it's really an enormous operation. And one of the, it's not just at the federal level, it's at the state level too, right? States around the country, right, have been compromised by Chinese Communist Party operatives and by Chinese Communist Party money. Look, a story I tell in here, I look back at Chinagate, and a lot of people don't remember what Chinagate is. We talk about the Clintons a lot, but a lot of people don't remember Chinagate. What Chinagate was is when Chinese intelligence officers started pouring all sorts of money into the Democratic National Committee in the mid-90s. And people are like, oh, it was, people marginally tied to China, so it's weird, and this and that, Indonesia, this. These were all people with serious relationships with Chinese intelligence, right? There was actually one Chinese intelligence officer, I think the head of military intelligence, who was also the head of the Navy, the head of the admiral of the PLA Navy, was sending money in as well. What had happened to Bill Clinton was, when he was governor of Arkansas, as an up-and-coming politician, the DNC saw Clinton the way the CCP did. They saw him as a promising political figure. And I document how different figures, different Chinese allied businessmen, went to Little Rock and cultivated Bill Clinton. So that's what happened. The Chinese uh, the Chinese tried to. And I'm not saying that Bill Clinton, who I think was a pretty okay president, betrayed his country, but there's no doubt in my mind that the Chinese actively tried to compromise it, first in Arkansas and then again as the president.
Well, there's two things really important that you just mentioned here. Okay, one of them is that the CCP operates at every scale of government and does precisely what you're describing. There's been multiple examples of this. They cultivate all sorts of people, cultivate in the sense that they develop their relationships, they become friendly. And then, those things can be worked on further if someone happens to advance. But here's the other part that really struck me here, and I don't think this is talked about enough. You're basically telling me that the majority of the China lobbying money isn't actually Chinese money. And that's incredibly important to know. Do you have an estimate of what percentage would be, money lobbying for communist China not being Chinese money?
I mean, if we'd have to go and we'd have to look at every American company that has manufacturing in China, and whatever they're making, would have to go into what that lobby is worth. It's trillions of dollars, right? Because all of those American businessmen, they want that stuff in China because they're making a lot of money. And so what's the argument? I mean, you just gave a version of it, how they put it, like, oh, you don't understand, we're so interconnected and we're so intertwined and we can't pull ourselves apart. Like, you could, right? We hear all the arguments, oh, that China has the supply lines and the training and no one else does. It's like, right, it's going to take some effort. That's true too. It's going to take some effort for the United States to break free of this. But Donald Trump is the president who wants American companies to do that. And he's offering different ways to help, including very low corporate tax rates. So a lot of the excuses, that's part of China lobby messaging. We can't do it. It's too hard. We're too interwoven with with Chinese business elites. So that's messaging. That's lobbying messaging.
I mean, bottom line is you're saying these policies from the current Trump administration are basically designed to, activate the self-interest of the business leaders to bringing the money to America and pulling it out of China.
Yeah, which is hard to do. I mean, there's a lot of people, you may have seen that, Jamie Dimon announced, was it $10 billion worth of investment in important American industries. And so there are a lot of people in the business world who are also starting to see that China is a real danger to the United States, right? This started to happen during COVID. That was a big deal during COVID, when people saw not only the criminality of the regime that lied to us about the nature of the transmission and origins of COVID, but also how the supply lines got all jammed up. So people became concerned about that, and they realized, TikTok, there's a whole bunch of different issues that have made American businessmen who were perhaps complacent before, that have put them out there. On the front line, and they're saying, yeah, okay, I admit it. I fooled myself about this before, or I didn't get it. Now I get it. We have to fight it. Here's what I'm going to do. And Jamie Dimon really comes to the top of the list, because for a long time he'd been someone who got along pretty easily with Beijing.
Explain to me how the visa system was abused. You catalog that incredibly well in the book.
Yeah, well, this is terrible what happened, and Donald Trump didn't really have an understanding. A couple of months ago now, Donald Trump was talking like, oh no, I want 600,000 students, Chinese students here on visas. And I'm like, okay, that's definitely part of his negotiation, because I know for a fact he doesn't. He was very worried to find out there were 300,000 Chinese graduate students on student visas during his first term. And I mean, when the president was notified about where they are, Ezra Cohen is one of the sources. He was an intelligence official in the first Trump administration. Great guy, very insightful, very concerned about the threat of the Chinese Communist Party, and that's how they found out. That's how they found out that there were real dangers. Look, a lot of these students are at not classified facilities, very sensitive facilities like U.S. nuclear labs. And as Ezra explains in the book, a lot of these things, it's kind of messy. It's not like it's a perfect delineation all the time between classified work and sensitive work. So we've seen different PLA officials, different Chinese intelligence officials stealing intelligence. We've seen the different people or rather stealing sensitive material or classified material. We saw, we've seen professors at Ivy League universities. And one of the big problems, Jan, is I'm sure your former broadcast partner, Kash Patel, knew even before he took the job of FDI director, but with 300,000 Chinese graduate students in the country, and not to say that all of them necessarily want to spy for the PRC, but maybe put in compromising positions to do so, the FBI simply can't cover 300,000 people, right? So it's a disaster. So that's what I mean when the Americans who have not recommitted to their country need to recommit. And the top of the list are university presidents.
Well, we have to face reality. We have to have this eyes wide open approach. But the current reality, the current status quo that we're in, it was developed without that. And now we have to deal with the consequences. So how do we approach this?
Well, look, Donald Trump being the first president to act on this, I think it's really, I've talked about this a bit before. I mean, one of the things that he's worried about upsetting markets, all presidents are now. Remember, George W. Bush was worried about upsetting the market after 9/11 and as the global war on terror started. And I understand that. He doesn't want to disrupt our economy and doesn't want to disrupt the country. But I think it would be advisable. I mean, Donald Trump communicates very well with Americans. That's his whole thing. It's not just Truth Social, previously Twitter, but look at his rallies. I mean, his rallies are fantastic. The way he gets down there and can talk to people, right? That's what people love about his rallies. They don't like him, reading off the teleprompter. Though granted, reading off stories about or policy that saved his life in Butler, Pennsylvania, when he turned his head to talk about his policy. But for the most part, people don't like hearing Donald Trump talk about policy. They like him talking to the American people, right, spontaneously, like a great entertainer. So I think that it would be great if the president could basically give people a fireside chat and say, here's what's happening. This is what you elected me for. You elected me to bring jobs back to America. You elected me to keep our peace and advance our prosperity, and that's what I'm doing. But I have to tell you, as you're seeing, things may get a little harder. And this tariff regime, this is an important instrument. And here's why I'm using it. And this is something, as I describe in the book, quoting just great, brilliant people, Clyde Prestowitz, Robert Lighthizer, different people who know a lot about free trade and tariffs. Donald Trump might say, look, it's the tariffs have been a part of our system since Alexander Hamilton. I know they're going to tell you I'm a wild-eyed revolutionary. I'm not. This goes back to the founding of our country, and tariffs are always about building our prosperity as well as securing our peace, and that's what I'm doing. So that's one of the things I would love it if the president could help get people on board, explain what's really going on, explain why this is so important, because again, in 2016, this was one of the reasons Americans elected him. When Barack Obama said, how are you going to return those jobs? Those jobs aren't coming back. What's your magic wand? Donald Trump did it. He started bringing jobs back. So that's why we voted for him, and I'd like to see him talk to people about that. A common people with a common purpose.
One thing I really appreciated in your book is that you speak with some people who are let's say, dissidents who were acting for the benefit of human rights in China, an Uyghur activist, as well as a Falun Gong practitioner. I can't help, I reminded me of interviewing someone years ago who had actually worked in one of these factories, an American citizen. He worked in one of these slave labor camps / factories, and he was making Homer Simpson slippers for a Hackensack, New Jersey company, the kind where you kind of put your foot into the mouth of Homer, sort of thing. And he was just kind of, himself was shocked to discover this is happening. And the slave labor was part of the dynamic here, right?
Right. I mean, in the book, I find it was a very moving interview with with a Falun Gong practitioner, and he's talking about how he was in prison in China, and he said the guards would say, "Yeah, the Americans know all about it, and they don't care," and no one could believe. And the person who spoke to me said no one could believe it really, because the Americans would never turn a blind eye to this kind of suffering or this kind of indignity, this kind of torture. But in fact, when this person left, when this person came to the United States, where he now lives, and he saw at Christmas time that some of the Christmas lights that he'd indeed been forced to make in prison were for sale in American markets. And that, to me, that when he told me that just chilled me. And I hope other Americans reading the book are really chilled by it too, saying, gosh, that's just terrible. And especially, Christmas time. And so that's what, that's where some of our Christmas cheer comes from this incredible suffering and torture. So yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted. That's one of the things that I wanted to drive home here. It's not just about foreign policy, and it's not just about trade, but this is a communist regime, and they're disgusting and they're disgraceful, and and obviously it's not an attack on Chinese people, but it is making a case saying the people who rise to the top of this regime have climbed atop the corpses of tens of millions of fellow Chinese. It's just disgusting. And the fact that Americans have strengthened, have empowered this regime, not only now to hurt their own citizens, but to hurt Americans. It's we're in a very bad place, not just in terms of trade and national security, but in terms of morality as well.
So you've been describing this fireside chat that you're hoping the sort of which the president could have with the American people. I'm struck by this situation where the Chinese Communist Party really only has one leg of the Chinese economy left to stand on, and that's the export economy. That's why it's flooding whatever markets will take its goods, at fire sale prices, because that's where all the money they're making is coming from, basically. So here we are, and so it made me think, and especially this element now, this really hits home when you talk about, how U.S. corporations are involved in basically supporting the Chinese system. It's really actually, kind of American corporations that are driving those imports. There's a kind of too big to fail argument that strikes me, okay? Because this economy is very brittle, export-only economy. These tariffs are making it very difficult for them. I can imagine a situation where, basically people are telling the president, hey, we don't want economic havoc in China. We don't, because with all these things, you ultimately have to pay the piper. But this is really, if this fails, they go down, we go down with them. So we have to keep propping up the regime as we have been all along.
I don't. I don't see that we go down with them. I mean, but that's what I mean. I mean, we are likely to feel some pain. I mean, we're a constitutional republic. We have a very resilient people, right? I guess you can say in some ways the people who constitute the elite of the Chinese Communist Party, they've, I mean, just Xi's story itself is insane. His father was, imprisoned, and Xi just decided, oh, instead of turning against them, I'm just going to show him a communist superhero. But I mean, Americans are resilient. I mean, we're a very hardy people, but our resources need to be called upon. The president needs to, or someone needs to summon our strength and say, look, it might get hard here. I don't know. But here's the end goal. We can't be tied to this government anymore because they're crazy and they're vicious and they want to destroy us. They want us to live like slaves. Remember, everyone, what COVID was like? And this is the way that the president can kind of refer to lockdowns without necessarily talking about lockdowns, but saying that was bad. That's how these people are all the time. No freedom of speech, no freedom of anything. And we can't live like that, and we can't live as slaves to that regime. So we're going to fight, and this is part of the cornerstone of my legacy. I'm your president. I love this country, and here's what we have to do. So, yes, something like that. I would just like to see Americans understand what the purpose is, what our fight is about. I think my book plays some role in that, explaining the history, saying how bad that regime is and how bad our regime is, to have become a matrix, to have basically folded into the same thing, Chinese Communist Party elites and U.S. elites. It's extremely dangerous. So I think I explained to people what's happened, what some of the astonishing scandals are, and how Donald Trump is the person who's pledged to reverse course and save this country.
No one wants to admit they were wrong, especially when that wrong, caused people a lot of pain. But it just struck me as you're saying this, Lee, that this kind of does offer an opportunity. I mean, President Trump's policies do offer a kind of an opportunity for people that have been involved, because they can say, hey, look, it's the president's policies that are forcing me to get out, and I kind of have to, and frankly, that'll be for the good of everyone.
No, right. That's great. It's like, hey, shareholders or whatever, we have to get out. The president's making life hard. Yeah, I know he'll be out in 3 years, but in the meantime, he's got a whole bunch of different mechanisms he can use to really hurt us. And plus, besides, we're an American company. We're patriots. Our president is summoning us to come back home, and we're going back home. And if you want to fire me, you should fire me. Yeah, I think I can. It's there's a lot of different arguments that that people can make about it. Yeah, I think that Trump is supporting them. And again, the idea that he's urging people to come back home. We'll do this for you. We'll do that for you. I'll bring you into a joint session of Congress. Hold up your hand and say, champion, champion. You're a champion. So and he has done a lot of that. Again, I'm hopeful that the American people understand the stakes that are involved, and also that they also understand Trump's heroism here too. We talk about, rightly, we talk about him getting shot in the face, shot in the head in Butler, Pennsylvania, and getting up. I mean, the way that I read Russiagate now is Russiagate was partly an operation to keep Trump distracted from dealing with China. But look at all the different attacks he's taken just for going after China. Look at what he's up against. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of guts.
Well, Lee, your book, The China Matrix, I think required reading, not just for people interested in the China question, but I would say for everyone. A final thought as we finish?
Yes, I want to say one thing. The book that I wanted to write, like The Plot Against the President, I wanted to write a story. I wanted to tell a story, and there is a story, and the story is very important, and it's how U.S. elites sold out their country, and the bad guy, Henry Kissinger, stands for all the bad guys, and the people who want our country back, right? And there are millions of them. Donald Trump, he's the protagonist. He's the good guy. It's a story about good and evil, because this is truly an evil regime. Jan, and no one can speak to that more directly than you can. It's truly an evil regime, and the idea that American elites have tied us to these beasts, these animals. And so the people who are trying to free us from them, like Donald Trump, like others on the left and on the right, deserve to be celebrated, cheered on, and deserve our support in their battle, because the battle is really for us and the future of our country. So that's what it is. It's fundamentally a story. And that's why in the subtitle, it's the epic story. It's an epic. It's been going on for at least 50 years. And I want to thank you so much for letting me come on and speak about it today.
Well, Lee Smith, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
Jan, it is always a huge pleasure to be speaking with you anytime. And you and I have spoken in many